An amazing session today. We have the CFO, Marc from Altruist, who I've worked with before. And we have Katherine as well, who's the head of people, also from Altruist. So this is just such a treat because we have the people leader, the finance leader, all sitting together, even sharing the same laptop in the same room. If that's not real collaboration, I don't know what is. So super excited about this session. As we kick this off, maybe Katherine and Marc would love a quick round of intros from you all, and we can kind of dive into the topics. I know we have so much fun stuff to cover.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Haris. Great to be here. So my background, I started my career on the East Coast with EY in accounting and auditing and transaction work. And then that interest in tech brought me to the West Coast in the late 90s, the first internet boom. My gray hair gives it away a little bit, but spent time with EY, then joined a company on the LMS side, a company called Sava Software. Then I moved to Pixar. Spent a good portion of my career, 16 years at Pixar, first on the corporate accounting team, then moved to the FP&A, the controller, the film side. And then I spent my last years there as divisional CFO. I decided that wasn't sort of the end of my story. Although Pixar is an incredibly difficult place to leave, I moved to Blend, where Haris and I had the pleasure and the opportunity to work together. Spent 5 years there, raised a bunch of rounds of funding, saw the company grow pretty significantly, did an IPO, a public company transition, and then I moved to Altruist about 1.5 years ago. But an interesting note about the Blend times, I was actually interim head of people during the pandemic. So I'm especially fond of and connected to and empathetic towards the HR finance collaboration.
And hi, I'm Katherine. I'm the VP People here at Altruist. Love working with Marc. So I'm originally from Los Angeles, kind of a rare thing to hear, though I did spend a lot of time up in the Bay Area, as most people who work in tech do. And I actually came up on what I call like the recruiting track in San Francisco for a number of years, eventually moved home to LA to be closer to family. And that was actually where I took my first role owning both like the whole people function, the HR and recruiting side. And that was about 11 years ago at a small Series A company in Santa Monica, Silicon Beach. And I think that was really where I discovered my true superpower and niche. I'm very much a builder. Joined Altruist as well as a Series A. This is my fourth time joining a company kind of in that very early stage as the first people hire and helping to build out all that infrastructure for the company to grow and scale. I've been with Altruist for, it'll be 4 years in January, which is wild, and helped us scale from about 50 people to 450. And as like head of people, I own all things kind of HR, talent acquisition and talent management, as well as like facilities and workplace, because we are a hybrid workforce and we're here in our office right now.
Amazing. So from Series A to post IPO, between Katherine and Marc, you have it all covered, tech and non-tech. So there'll be lots of amazing insights here. And I know I said this before, I worked with Marc as well. So we also kind of collaborated and jammed on a lot of things that are, as an operator, the CFO, and as Marc was the interim head of HR as well. So definitely lots of great experiences from Blend as well that we can kind of highlight. Katherine, you mentioned that you joined at the Series A, and over time, depending on stage of the company, the size of the company, the needs of the company, these roles kind of change and evolve as well, right? So maybe let's start at the very top. What is your role right now? What's the role of a people leader? What's the role of a finance leader? And how do you think these roles evolve, both over time with the company, but also, from the way management was done in the 70s to how the expectation of a CFO and a CHRO are vastly different in 2024. So I'd love to kind of get your take there.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think I'll answer the first part first. The role, the company's needs evolve quite a bit between like a Series A and post Series E. When you first join a very early stage company, even in the senior role, it's all blocking and tackling. It's setting up basics, benefits, payroll systems, like all those things that, are just, you have to check those boxes. They're really important and they do impact that employee experience. But I think more broadly, when I pull back of like in the industry, HR has really gone, I think, from kind of a dirty word. We've tried to rebrand it as people, but that's another story. Kind of going from like paper pushing and just like very tactical and like mitigate risk to a truly a strategic function, especially when you think of a tech company. You're really only as good as your people. And I think also, and Marc will probably speak to this even more, headcount, the humans who power your business are most companies' largest investment, as I like to call it, versus expense. And so I think when it comes to HR and finance, like we have to be super close, not just physically in this particular meeting, but we're not only trying to manage the spend, but we're also really trying to evaluate, like, are we getting a good return on that investment? And I think that's where kind of HR and finance can work together to really illustrate that, or help nudge it if that's not happening.
Yeah, that's great. Really, really well said. I like to think about the CFO's role oftentimes as a resource allocator. How do you allocate your human capital to build new products, solve problems, optimize costs, create efficiencies? And then, of course, you want to build a lasting and impactful company and a culture that you're really, really proud of. And that partnership and that balance that happens between HR and finance, I think, is really powerful. And going back to even the way Katherine started, you have to start with the basics. We say here, like, flawless execution of the basics. You have to be able to do the basics in order to graduate to the more sophisticated conversations around engagement and culture and workplace in order to build that company and that culture that you're really proud of.
That's amazing. And Marc, I know long time ago, I worked in the finance space as well, 20 plus years ago. Not good at it by any means, but when I worked in the finance space, I spent a lot of time on spreadsheets, and that's not the job. That's not what the finance team is all about, right? So maybe can you also talk about, similar to the HR people function, how has this role evolved? What are the expectations as well for? Sure.
And like Katherine said, it's that flawless execution of the basics, right? You have to be able to understand where you're spending your money, how you're spending it. Is it being there's some basics around approvals and oversight and analytics, but you want to graduate to the more fun, the more dynamic, the more creative part of finance, which is business partnering. Like, what products are we building? How are we building them? How do our customers react to those products? Do they pay for them? Are they happy when they pay for them? They feel like they're getting value out of those products. And then it goes back to that resource allocation questions. Okay, we're allocating resources because this product makes sense, or we're allocating resources because we think this is something that the customer needs, or it rounds out our platform in a way that allows us to move up market or to a different vertical.
Amazing. Yeah, I think both of you are, saying the HR function, the finance function is strategic. It's not tactical. Yes, there's lots of blocking and tackling you have to do on a day-to-day basis, and more of it at the earlier stage versus at the later stage. But ultimately, people are the number one assets. That's what makes the engine go round. So just being thoughtful and strategic about it is kind of the job, right? And we're going to get into it. There's different boundaries and things to think about as well, for sure. But ultimately, it's making sure you're hitting business goals and objectives, and making sure that the people who are helping you get there are empowered and successful.
Exactly. And the tools that you use in order to, I was having this conversation yesterday with someone about the power. I mean, we're all talking about AI, of course. The roles on our finance team are evolving. The things that are the basics are more and more, there's more and more opportunities to automate those basics. And then how do we move along the sort of the evolutionary curve to provide insights?
Amazing. That's a really good point too. We'll circle back on the role of AI in HR and finance as well, since you brought it up, and maybe in a few minutes. But as we kind of dive in, I will do a terrible job of explaining what Altruist does. I know it's software to help kind of power the wealth management space, but would love for one of you to kind of provide a little bit of context on the company for our audience. What you do, how big you are, like in terms of like number of employees, and what kind of geos, metros, countries you might cover as well in terms of workforce.
Sure.
I'm gonna let Marc handle.
Sure, I can say a few words here. So when I'm at a cocktail party, I say that we're Shopify for financial advisors. So if you're a financial advisor, you want to run your practice, you want to do performance reporting and billing, and you want to trade equities, you want to provide an investment strategy to your clients, we provide that infrastructure so that you can run a financial advisory practice. And we're about, like Katherine mentioned, we're about 450 employees. We're based in LA and Culver City. We have our broker dealer in Dallas, so we're sort of multi geographical. We have a concentration also in the Bay Area, but we think we're on the providing technology that allows financial advisors to be more productive, to serve their clients better, and to provide an infrastructure to be able to run a financial advisory practice.
Amazing. That's great. So I'm picking up on a few different things, right? One is there's a complexity of geos, and then thinking about that and the strategy and where you hire and all of that kind of stuff, and culture, I imagine. And that's one piece of it. But also you have a tech portion of the company, and there's like a operational focus part of the company as well. And at least we see with a lot of our customers that they have, they're not just software only, tech only as well. So there are nuances there as well that we can kind of unpack together.
It's really important to note that we want to try and meet those financial advisors where they are, which means providing the best level of service that we can. So we have lots of people, and people's an important part of our strategy. So it's not just like, here's the technology and you go run with it. It's about how do we make the technology, how we build technology that makes the advisors more productive, and how do we provide better results for their clients as well.
Perfect. And I know that both of you said the HR role is evolving, the finance role is evolving, and in some ways it's kind of overlapping as well, right? So like ultimately, you're both focused on maybe with slightly different lens around hiring the best people and retaining them and making them successful, as you both have mentioned. But Marc, Katherine, any notes there? Can you discuss like how that your roles are each evolving as well, and what the overlap might be?
Sure. I mean, I think that at the very core, both of us sit on like our company executive team. So we all, as an executive team, I mean, I see us as we're company leaders first and functional leaders second. And so, our priority as an entire exec team is to ensure, that the company is successful, that we as a company are, hitting whatever performance goals, KPIs, OKRs that we've set, that our investors have set. And so we are, ultimately responsible for the company's success. I think what's maybe a little bit unique about, shared between our two functions, but unique for finance and HR, is that our functions span the entire company. So we have a little bit better of a bird's eye view than, say, the product leadership or sales leadership. And so I think that we're able to use that visibility to see how all the pieces fit together, like Marc was speaking about, of like, where should we be investing those resources? And we can use that to help coach and kind of communicate cross-functionally as well.
Okay. Anything to add there, Marc? That's super helpful, Katherine.
No, I think that's right. I think this is the goal is for the company to win and to build a culture that lasts. And you have to make change. Like culture is an evolving culture. It isn't just set in the moment of the founding of the company. The culture evolves over time, and there are different challenges the company will face over time. And being able to react to those changes, being able to make decisions in the face of certain challenges, economic, political realities, economic realities, cultural realities. Things that are happening around us, like these are humans, right? One of my last bosses said, things would be so much simpler if there weren't humans involved, right? Like, of course, these are real people with real families and real lives, and how you support them at work and how we build something that's meaningful as a company is also super important.
And it sounds like, what maybe going back to what Katherine was saying is both the people function, the finance function has a broader bird's eye view, strategic view of the whole company, and the people, the goals, right, the revenue goals, other business goals and KPIs. And it also, sounds like it starts with really kind of being aligned on some of the goals and KPIs as well. So any notes there, any thoughts there around like how you all align around the same business goals and objectives? I'm sure there's a, typical like exercise that you go through with the C-suite or the exec team, but also how does that trickle down between the collaboration between the two of you as well?
Yeah, well, like you said, we do have kind of the annual planning exercise. We're in it right now. What fun. And I think, it's for us, it's not just about like our synergy, but I think it's really important to bring everybody along at the company to like what really matters. So we have and I think this is to your point, Mark, like how we've evolved our culture. I think we have we have one of the most transparent cultures that I've at least ever worked in at a company, where we share a lot of information with employees. Mark does an amazing job of, we kind of have our company OKRs, and we're sharing how we're tracking every month at all hands via Slack, via meetings. We share all these financial metrics, like a whole dashboard with the whole company, so everybody can see how we're tracking. And I think that helps put into context when decisions are made, it's to impact these things. And I think that helps keep everybody aligned, and it helps, explain sometimes there are trade-offs in business, and sometimes one headcount, for example, might be deprioritized, but it's because we're trying to allocate a resource over here because that's going to level up to those goals. And while that other team might be disappointed, I think it just helps everybody understand like where we're going and the why behind a decision, instead of just making a decision in a vacuum.
Yeah. I love I don't know where I learned this, but there's something called context over control, right? Like we want to give people the context to make decisions versus telling them to do something because I said it was so. And it's like raising kids, right? Like you want to give your kids the power to make decisions on their own, not always tell them exactly what to do. At least that's how it is in my family. But so I think it's really important. And if you hire people you trust and you respect them, then you should be able to share information with them in a really transparent way. And it obviously gets more complicated as as a public company, and are you an insider, or can you trade? Like it gets more complicated when you're a public company versus a private one. But I really think that while you should share as much information as possible and give people the context to make good decisions and understand where they fit, where their product fit, where their role fits in the broader goals of the company. If we don't win if finance wins, we win if the company wins.
That's amazing. Context over control. That's quotable. I mean, I have young kids, so I'm relearning this every day for sure, especially on weekends where.
I hope I footnote the right person. I don't know.
And then just to kind of click into this a little bit more, so it's amazing. So Altruist has this, transparent culture. You're sharing KPIs, goals, dashboards, and then. If you hire like smart people who are kind of incented to make the company successful, they want that context, right? Because ultimately they can come to some of those own conclusions themselves, versus if you hold information back, one, they don't feel connected to the mission and the goals in the same way. And number two, they don't feel like you're trusting them with critical information, and you're making a lot of these decisions, 1 or 2, 3 levels above them. And so they just have less of a stake, and then less flexible or less willing to do things, right? So I just kind of wanted to spell it out, the value of the transparency and the communication. Are there any kind of tactical things you do in terms of whether it's like communicating out the KPIs or the business goals, objectives, not just to the executive team, but the rest of management and the employees? And then how do you manage the communication? Sometimes there's good news and the communication might be easier, and sometimes it's less good news, and you still have to communicate that as well. So would love some tactical advice here for our audience.
So communications is, I think, an evolving thing at any company, and I'm not going to say that we've like completely nailed it every time, but we try. And I think that's the most important thing. So I think one of the things that we're working on right now and have started to implement is meeting people where they are and having a multi-pronged communication strategy. Historically, we've always, ever since I think the company was founded, before I even joined, we've had like at least a monthly all hands meeting, and we continue to do that. And that's probably our number one touch point for communicating information. And that's led by our CEO, but also Marc does a spotlight, I do a spotlight, different kind of functional areas. Sometimes it rotates. However, with hundreds of people on a call, sometimes it's like hard to tell, is information being digested? Everyone learns differently. So now I think we've started doing some kind of like written communications in addition to, so it's not it's an and, not an or. And I think that that's where we're starting to see, and even some smaller meetings as well for really important information. Like I know Marc's done some road shows into departmental meetings. And I think that's where we started to see, I think, a deeper level of comprehension. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. It's just, if people have a question, they're not always likely to ask it in front of 450 people, but they might in a smaller setting where they feel a little bit more safe. And so I think we're really trying to encourage that, because the more, and we can't expect every employee to have the same level of like, financial analysis skills as our CFO, but we're trying to, I think, allow them and trust them that they're really smart and they can, ingest this information if we give it to them in a, in the right forum.
We also try to encourage a level of approachability. I think that, like I had an employee yesterday ping me about a financial question, and it was just a one-on-one Slack conversation. And you start by thanking them for having the courage and the thoughtfulness to ask out and to be curious and to ask the question, right? And then you reward that. That employee will then tell another employee who says, "Oh, I had this question and Marc was so responsive. That was so great." Like, that's what you want to do. You want to, be the change you want to see in the world, and see. Well, this is what the kind of culture we want to promote. We want to promote a culture that's transparent. We promote kindness across and respectfulness across different levels of understanding of the various business lines. And the broker dealer business and the business that we're in is not millions of startups in the broker dealer space, right? So we're a little bit unique. Our main competition are companies like Schwab and Fidelity that have been around for 50 years, or longer. And so understanding, taking someone who came from another business and then moving them into Altruist, there is a learning curve that we want to get people on. So we use Slack a ton, and we use, various lists, right? Like various distribution lists. There's the executive leadership team, and there's an operating leadership team, and then there's the broker dealer team, and then there's managers, and there's all these different places where you can understand information. And there's general channels where you can ask questions about just fintech in general, or questions about securities lending, or about our net interest margin, or whatever the topic is. And so it takes time. And again, pulling from my past, if you're not tired of saying something, a lot of times you haven't said it enough. And so you have to continuously repeat it and say it different ways, and record the all hands meeting and post a link to Confluence, and then do a follow-up and do a series of town halls to make sure that people understood the equity, understand their equity, or they understand our compensation strategy, or they understand our engagement survey. And having the HR team has been amazing, helping us communicate and holding managers accountable, where they can follow up in their meetings. Did you do the survey, and have you done your performance reviews, and have you done, does your team understand why we're taking down this strategy with respect to this particular thing? So having that collaboration in the HR business partners, I think, also as a reminder to hold the managers, and having the managers hold their managers accountable, right? Like it's like an overlapping matrix that I think can be really powerful over time.
Amazing. Yeah. Even as a founder, I learned, it's reinforced to me, just communicating and repeating information. Like, there's as many times as I repeat information, even at a small company, it's never enough. And I've seen that, I've been a 450,000 plus person company too. So just repeating that information again and again and again, and being open and accessible is really helpful. Katherine, also to your point, sometimes people are shy about asking some of these questions because, if you're an engineer and you can't figure out something around the equity, you feel maybe like silly or asking in front of other peers because they can do math really quickly or whatever it might be. Like, I know I've been in that boat where I'm like, I should be good at this. I've worked in finance, but I can't figure this out. Let me ask Marc how this actually works. So I think that's also creating that space, whether it's large group or small group settings, on a repeat basis. I think that's really good kind of tactical advice too. I wanted to kind of circle back around the HR and finance collaboration and some of the goals and challenges. And maybe Katherine, we'll start with you around some of the goals, like budget management. There's a few projects that you and Marc work really closely on. So would love to kind of get your take on what some of those goals are and how you work with the finance team there.
Sure. Well, we work together on all those things. I think one thing that most recently, and maybe it's a little bit tactical, but we're still generally a pretty early stage startup, and HR and finance have worked really closely together to roll out kind of a departmental budget process. Maybe that's not great, but that's somewhat new for us. And so I think again, because our teams have kind of this higher level view, I think like the HR business partners sit on those budget reviews for each individual department. And I think our goal is to kind of work with finance and try to make every departmental leader like a little mini CFO of their own team, and to really understand that bigger picture. And I think there's still opportunities, and this is an evolving process, but that's been one of the core things. Obviously, we also partner together and collaborate on things like compensation philosophy, benefits investments, and things like that. I think where we're often, I think we're pretty aligned, because we all agree that like attracting and retaining the people that we want is paramount. But every year when we're going through these processes, it's an opportunity to kind of pull back and also talk about like, well, what type of candidates, for example, are we trying to attract? Are we trying to attract kind of junior, brilliant, more, is that the pool, or is it more senior established people? And that can therefore impact how we structure our plans. Do we want to have put more investment in the employee only category, for example, today, to have a free plan? Or do we want to invest more in the, family coverage, for example? So it's just like thinking, again, there's trade-offs. So we have to think about like, what are we trying to achieve with these programs? And I think that we do a really good job of working together on that.
Yeah, we're having this debate about how do we use contractors? Like, how important are contractors, and to what weighting do we want to put towards hiring full-time employees over contractors? What are good projects for contractors if we want to use them as part of our overall staffing strategy and our strategy to achieve certain product milestones? So it's an evolving and balancing process that changes as a result of any number of things, internal and external.
Yeah, just kind of play back, Catherine. You mentioned that there's business goals and KPIs. You kind of want to hit those. There are people, and you want to factor in like people and the sensitivities around that. But there are also trade-offs that you have to make. Full-time versus contractor, seniority level, manager versus IC, location. There's a lot of different kind of factors and levers, which is a superpower because companies are a lot more flexible now than, I'll say, the pre-pandemic, but it also creates a lot more work for you both and your teams as well, because there's more than one way to kind of carve the pumpkin, if I'm going to say that. But ultimately, I think that there is maybe one number that's fixed, which is the budget, right? There, in some ways, that is one of the things that's a zero-sum game, because all the numbers do need to add up. And so, Marc, how do you think about that? How do you think about balancing the budget, the cost efficiency, along with kind of all the variables you have on the people initiatives and some of the programs as well?
In the budget, the budget is an evolving, living, breathing document for us. Sometimes there are things that on the revenue side, for example, that may change your ability to spend money, or an inbound fundraise, or a formal fundraising process that may change. We have this new set of goals. We think we should fundraise for that, or we maybe want to use debt, or maybe we want to use. And how do we use our board to vet those strategies? We have a quarterly board meeting where we go through a lot of that. And the board has been an amazing partner for us in determining, okay, where do we pump the brakes, or where do we put our foot on the gas? We were having this discussion at our last board meeting about segmentation. What successes are we having with smaller advisors versus larger advisors with simple investment strategies, advisors with much more complicated investment strategies that use options or alts or margin? Like, how does that impact our product roadmap? How do we earn money as a result? So the budget, I don't think that the budget should be I don't want people to think that at least for us, we don't treat the budget as something you set at the beginning of the year and then you walk away from. There are things that change and things that evolve that you have to be dynamic, you have to be responsive to, and you do that, of course, with transparency and collaboration. You can't, if you plan to spend 10 million and now you're going to spend 40 million, you can't do that in a vacuum, right? Like,
Yeah.
but there are certain circumstances where it may be more important to the company, depending on what the goals are, to take an allocation of a resource to the product team and put it towards design, or the HR team and put it towards finance, or finance team and put it towards product. Or there are things that you have to do and it goes back to what Katherine was saying, is around, we are leaders of the company, not leaders of an organization. So sort of divorce yourself of like, my team has these goals and we can no longer hit them without this headcount. And it's hard, even sitting in the finance role, like, well, our audit has to be delivered, or but you have this expectation of us delivering these things within this many days of the close of the month. If without more resources, or without the resources I plan to hire, I can't do that. Okay, well, let's see what makes sense across the company. Where do we want to put our resources across the company, and where does that budget live, and how do we reforecast our spending according to the needs and the demands of the various parts of the business?
So many amazing kind of reminders and insights in what you both just mentioned there. So I'm going to recap a few of those things. One was, budget is not necessarily fixed. The business progress, the goals, KPIs are changing throughout the year. Sometimes you overshoot or undershoot quarter to quarter, right? Macroeconomic factors are changing. Some strategies are playing out. So just because you set a budget at the start of the year doesn't mean you have to execute on that exactly the way you planned. And it's a living, breathing thing, as you mentioned as well, Marc. And I know in the R&D team, you think about agile, and you think about like roadmap. And I guess what I'm hearing is the budget is also in some way kind of a living, breathing document. It's a roadmap, and so is headcount planning and people spend and who you hire and what sequence as well. Maybe you need to invest in AI initiatives earlier than later, or you need to build out a product before you hire the salespeople, or you need to kind of onboard CSMs because you're realizing at the end of Q1 that like we kind of need to invest in a certain area with like larger clients. Those are some examples. So I think that's just a really key point around that being living, breathing, like iterative. This is not just for the R&D teams, but the people team and the finance team.
Yeah, I think it's really also important to be transparent with your employees about, look, we set goals and priorities at the beginning of the year, or beginning of the quarter, or beginning of the month, and sometimes those things change. And it's not that, and by the way, there's some employees, I think, that level of change is not comfortable for them. Like, I like to set goals at the beginning of the year and I want to execute on those goals throughout the year. Okay, if that's your version of the ideal company, we may not be far enough along in our journey where things can be set at the beginning of the year, and you set them and execute them across a 12-month or a 9-month or even a 6-month period. So hiring for that level of chaos a little, and that probably overstates it, like that level of dynamism, right? Yeah. That's probably a better word. But like, not everyone can appreciate or wants to be part of an organization that changes direction multiple times during the quarter.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So like hiring for that, setting the right expectations baked into the culture, and then surfacing the KPIs, the progress, being transparent about it. It's kind of the full loop, right? So you bring in the right people, they understand the company and the needs and how it's evolving, and you're transparent and you communicate with them so that they are clued into that, so they can as you said, they context over control, so they have all that context and they can come along with the journey. So that makes a lot of sense. I think I wanted to shift gears a little bit. I know we have about like 10 minutes left, and you both shared a lot of great strategies and great tactics. I wanted to click into some more of the tactics around effective collaboration between the HR function and finance as well. Maybe Katherine, Marc, can you share maybe a few more real-world examples from Altruist or beyond on how the each function supporting each other and working together. Yeah, so I'd love to click into some of those best practices as well.
Sure. So just tactics for how we collaborate well. I think it might be oversimplifying, but the first is always just constant communication. We talked about that a lot as it relates to like disseminating information, I think like downward, but also I think across, and things, like Marc said, change rapidly at a startup, and that's okay. So embrace that. So I think we're big fans of, as I call them, RTUs, or real-time updates, and over communicating. I think that that's like really the foundation, because things can change on a dime, and in a good way. Opportunities strike, we have to pivot. That's exciting, you know, to seize those moments. So I think that there's just that. And then I think sometimes the other more tactical mindset thing is about like, it's okay to kind of make sure that your partner understands dynamics kind of within your core function. Like I think an example that we're going through right now is a change and an evolution in our talent bar. And I think this is exciting. You know, our company, we're bigger, we're more established, we're able to attract a different, and we need to attract a different caliber of talent. Now that caliber of talent might also have different compensation expectations. Perhaps they're used to bonus programs, and we're earlier in our stage, we don't have that. And so it's like, but giving that context again of here's why we need this and why we're going after that type of talent. Here's what they're expecting. What can we do? Let's think creatively and sit together about that. And that also might create some outliers. How can we avoid that or mitigate those issues? So, you know, and I think then from there, we can work together around like, how does that impact our budget? And then the HR business partners can go and coach those managers like, hey, you might need to have a diverse team of levels, right? And that will kind of keep everything even. And I think really coaching them around like, hey, investing in some of that junior talent can actually pay massive dividends. It's like, that's the long game. And those individuals become your superstar. You need some mentors. And so by like being really thoughtful about the whole team, not just like the hire that's right in front of your face right now, I think can satisfy both sides.
Yeah, no, that's right. I one of the things I do, Haris, is I have this posted on my monitor. It says ask questions first. And I just as a reminder, I have a tendency to jump to solutioning. And I try and remind myself that to have empathy for whatever the person is coming from. Like they're going to have a specific perspective that I might not have. So before I do anything, I just keep reminding myself, ask first. Like seek to understand from the outset. And then that helps build trust. It helps build an understanding. Maybe there's something I didn't think of when I was already thinking about the solution as they brought the particular problem to me or a particular path that they're on. So I think just that overarching, the power of empathy and the power of seeking to understand and asking questions up front before you get into the what do we do next part is like develop that trust that comes from seeking a mutual understanding. Are we both in the same place? I'm asking some questions. In the process of me asking questions, it often initiates the other person or the other team to ask me some questions about why I'm thinking or how I'm thinking about something, or what my experience was in a prior company, or in last year or last quarter or last month when we came across a similar problem. So I think that power of ask is something that it's so useful in so many situations.
That's a good reminder. I also have a sticky note there to remind myself to kind of ask and inquire before I jump to solutions. So I have total empathy for what you were saying there, Marc. Question for each of you, but maybe I'll start with Marc first. So Marc, do you also think, have like KPIs that you're communicating out? Like, I don't know, like revenue per employee or cost per employee? Like, can you talk about some of the KPIs that you're using as a watermark that you might be sharing with Katherine, but also some of the other leadership team as well?
Sure. We do look at ARR per FTE. That's something that is one that's fairly prominent for us. Assets under management and number of advisors on the platform, and net new assets for the month or quarter or year. Like those are things that are indicators of operational success. So there's financial, there's operational, and we try and balance those also with some people initiative. We look at engagement. We have a survey a couple times a year. We look at engagement. We look at turnover information. We look at hiring, time to hire and hiring success. And so we try and balance our KPIs between the pure financial, like revenue, net profit, EBITDA, with a balance with some ones that cross over, ARR per FTE, revenue per FTE, with ones that are purely, that there's an engagement survey, right? Like there's turnover information. So we've tried to, again, as we talked about earlier, be really transparent about those metrics. And we like to show them over time. All right, is it on an upward trend, or is it on a downward trend, or is it really kind of flat? And is that what we expected? Like, how is that relative to expectations? I think we try and be balanced in our communication, that we show I was just having this debate about, we have a company meeting tomorrow. We're having this debate about some feedback and from our advisors. And when I saw the slide, it had all the positives there. I was like, there's got to be some advisors who are unhappy with us. Like, we have to make sure that we don't see Pollyanna about something, or we have things that we're working on. And it's easy, at the leadership level, almost sometimes to be focused on all the things we have to fix. Yeah. Again, you don't celebrate the wins. I think you need to do that. And with employees in a general meeting, be all positive, win, success. I think in both cases, there's a balance.
That's well said. I know I hear a lot of companies and teams thinking about what the right KPIs are at different stages of the company as well. And there's no kind of one right answer, and it's different from industry to industry and B2B to B2C, and when you have advisors on staff and operational teams versus like software. So there's a lot of nuance to what Marc just mentioned, but certainly I think setting those goals, looking at both the positives and the negatives, and kind of really being thoughtful about that, that's really key. Maybe Katherine, switching to something that you mentioned a few minutes ago, which was, as Altruist is growing and scaling, you're also looking to bring in more talent from the outside as well, right? Like, you're nurturing existing talent, but you also need to grow from the outside and bring in people with maybe different skills or different experiences and different backgrounds. And so how do you align, Marc maybe, but also other leaders on some of that, right? Because it's, in some ways, it's softer, right? It's not as easy as revenue per employee. So you have to be able to educate the company that, yes, to achieve this goal, we need a leader that's this level of seniority, or we need to kind of up level talent who has this X type of experience. Maybe can you talk about that? Because I know a lot of leaders think about that, and it's easier said than done.
It is. And there's always the people of it all. And so I do think that there's a level of just hands-onness that's needed, because every situation is a little different. But something that I think we've really started to become much more active around is succession planning. I think when companies grow quickly, suddenly you look up and you're like, whoa, we got some single points of failure. And those people can be great, right? And it's not that we don't want them, but what if
succession planning, single points of failure? You have to look around the corners.
Eliminate that very consciously, and that's a real balance, especially from a finance side of you don't want to be bloated, but you also don't want to have single points of failure. And so it's how can we identify what are those really, really key seats that if that person were to leave or retire or have to move because of their spouse, there's all kinds of reasons that people leave jobs. Would we be in a real pickle? And how can we kind of mitigate some of that risk with some complementary skills or just better org structure? So I think that's really been the last year in particular, focusing on that. Maybe we've had to learn the hard way once or twice. I think, but also really illustrating kind of that cost benefit. If we don't do those things, there could be a very serious, financial implication down the line if something were to happen. So I think that's one area. And then I was just thinking of, Marc, when you were talking about some of these efficiency metrics of ARR to employee. And I think that we've done a pretty good job going down a level deeper, even within the functions. And so, that's like top line at the company, but like, let's look at like our support or our operations teams. And I mean, they have all kinds of data and are really focused on like, how many like accounts or how many, hundreds of millions can each person, handle within kind of a comfortable range of our service levels. And I think that makes, when we need to add headcount, it's very formulaic. Like we can now kind of predict a rep can handle X amount. And, there's only 24 hours in a day. And so it's like, then we know that we need to add resources, and this is another opportunity where I think finance, HR, and the functions work really closely or do we need to build, say like product efficiencies that might reduce our need for headcount, but then there's a different kind of investment. And what is the like return on that investment? Because one is obviously like a long-term gain. So those are the types of the conversations that I think we're having quite a bit now as we're like entering this next phase for the company.
Catherine, that's super helpful around like just digging deeper, going like 1 or 2 levels deeper versus just kind of surface level metrics, and really understanding all the inputs for the different roles and functions and being able to kind of predict it and to the best of the ability. Maybe similar question as well with compensation programs and employee benefits programs. How do you design those? How do you upgrade those? How do you and Marc think through the trade-off of some of those things as well? Would love to get both your takes on that.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer first, and Marc, please chime in. I mean, I think we're looking at a lot of benchmark data, both, especially for like the benefit side. I think that data is frankly a little bit more consistent. The last like 5 years on comp has been a little bit wonky within our industry, where I think the industry itself has had some ups and downs, just technology in general. But, we're kind of looking at like, okay, what's standard and where do we want to really flex? I think like we don't want to just check the box and be bare minimum. You're not going to attract and retain the type of talent you want there. And I think another thing that we're looking at, we try to, again, like take a very holistic approach, like to total rewards and compensation. It's not just your cash or your equity or your bonus, but it's also like all those benefits. It's paid leave. I mean, there's like a lot of things that motivate people. And I think just reminding, that everyone is a human, right? And so we actually, for example, we've invested in paid parental leave for birthing and non-birthing parents. And we did that pretty early on, and that's not a federal requirement. And it's actually kind of been incredible, the feedback that we've gotten on that. Not even from people with children. They're just like, wow, like I like working for a company that does that. It's a retention play as well. People are more likely to come back if they feel like they've had a great, leave and that they were really taken care of. And that costs quite a bit of money. But that's like an area that we've wanted to invest in to go well above, I think, those benchmarks. On the comp side, one area, it's interesting because you can do surveys, but everybody wants to make more money. I mean, that's just human nature. So it's not always like the best indicator, because I don't think anyone's ever going to say like, no, I don't. But with that said, like, I think we've tried to dig in, especially with our talent team, who's talking with candidates in particular, to see what is top of mind for kind of out there. And one piece that we've really also identified was a lack of understanding around our equity packages. And, equity is certainly apples and oranges. 1,000 shares at one company could be the same as 100,000 at another company, and really trying to educate our existing staff. Marc and our COO did a fantastic job there. I think, my team came to finance, was like, we're really struggling here. And did a very like comprehensive kind of roadshow in small groups to get this information out there. Marc and as well as our COO are open to helping close candidates. You guys are the closers. They will go through a very, very intricate kind of discussion and explanation and model of our equity with a candidate to help close them so they can really understand what they're getting. And I think that that's really helped us kind of overcome a lot of gaps where maybe we don't have a company-wide bonus program or something like that.
Yeah. I also like to think, I completely agree. I also like to think about how the compensation fits within the context of the goal, which is achieving the company's goals. So how does the compensation program align with our workplace strategy? How does it align with how we hold managers accountable to giving performance feedback. How do we make sure that people feel like they're working with other really smart people on a common goal that they're really connected to and really engaged with? That it's a mission-driven. We want to be part of a mission-driven company. So how do people align with the mission? Are they mercenaries, right? Like, how do we think about the employee type that we hire and the employee type that we retain, and how is compensation part of the motivation for people to work really hard and stay here and help us achieve the goals that we want to achieve?
I think lots of amazing notes there. I know we're near time as well, so maybe one final question, kind of looking ahead. What are you excited about in the future, in terms of like HR and finance collaboration? What do you think are areas where you both and your teams might collaborate, and where do you think like tools and processes can kind of come into place? Like, what does the future look like for this collaboration for you both?
You want to start?
Oh, sure. Well, I think we touched on it earlier of just like there tools, whether that's AI or just, I think when I look to the future and being more efficient, even within like the HR function, having kind of tools for these tasks will become more and more important, getting out of spreadsheets, so to speak, because it also allows us to be more efficient with our time. Like Marc said, so much, is already starting to get automated, and that's only going to continue. And so creating ways for us to offload, those tactical questions of like, what's my benefit questions, or, those types of things, and allowing us to focus on the human side. And the bigger strategic things that maybe like an AI bot isn't there yet. Probably will be in a year, but we'll see. So that's what I'm really excited about, and I think that there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, I really am excited by problem solving, and I think that this kind of collaboration, when you feel like people are working with good purpose, they're coming from a good place. We're assuming positive intent always, right? Like, that's what's exciting to me, is the problem solving part, and knowing that the problems of today won't be the problems of tomorrow, and having the people around me that are excited about and motivated by solving those problems in a really collaborative and productive and sort of kind way.
Amazing. This was such a great session. I feel like I could interview you both for hours. And you really kind of jam off each other, like like peanut butter and jam. But it kind of really highlights the collaboration there. There's so many notes, and we'll share some of these offline. But I'll call out a few things I wrote. It really starts with the people team and the finance team and all of the leaders are kind of, ultimately the goal is to serve the company, and it's less about your individual functions. Yes, that's what you think about on a day-to-day basis. So being aligned on the same business goals and objectives, communicating those KPIs, context over control, hiring people who kind of fit that bill, more missionaries, less mercenaries, and then empowering them with the tools, being transparent, communicating when plans change. I think there's a lot there that other companies can kind of learn from. Having dashboards and KPIs and reporting them, having town halls. There's a lot of tactical things that you both also shared around like how companies can do this effectively, which is, I think, amazingly helpful. Whether it's business KPIs, comp programs, headcount budgeting programs, etc. as well. But really, I think that the best way to end this is like to do this with positive intent and empathy, because on the good days it's a great job, or these great jobs, and on bad days it can be tough jobs. But if you have that as the kind of the compass, I think it usually works out at the end of it. So, Katherine, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good to see you again as well.
Congratulations on your success.
Thank you as well. Folks, check out Altruist. They're growing, as you heard. So if there's a role, who to reach out to, Katherine and Marc on LinkedIn. Just amazing place to work, and you can see the head of people and the head of finance sitting literally shoulder to shoulder together. If that happens, it's going to be a great ride. So thank you to Altruist and Katherine, Marc. Thanks again.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.